Hello, Assalamu alaikum and good evening. Welcome to another episode of the Classics Show. I am your host, Shabnam Riaz. Okay, today we've got a fantastic subject and we're going to talk about travel books and a particular travel book. The name is Pakistan Traveller and it's been written by the author who is called Tim Blight, and Tim is with us today in the studios. Thank you so much, Tim, for taking out the time for being here.
Thank you very much for having me here.
Right. Well, you know, it's really interesting because this is the book. This is Tim's book. It's called Pakistan Traveller, and this is really interesting because tell us about this, Tim. How did it come into being? What happened? What was your first sort of visit to Pakistan, and how did it initiate?
So my first visit to Pakistan was in 2006, and at that time I had been travelling around parts of the Middle East. I had been to Iran, I had been to Dubai, many other countries, and I then planned to come to Pakistan because it was just another country to visit.
Right.
And when I came here, you could say that I fell in love with the country. I met some amazing people.
Right.
And I kept coming back. I came back in 2007, 2010, and then since 2013 I've been coming here regularly for a couple of months each year to actually spend time.
Wonderful.
And as time went on, well, when I first came here in 2006, I had a travel guidebook to guide me around. But then by the time I came here in 2013, all of the guidebooks had gone out of print because of what was going on.
Yeah.
So I started to put together my travel notes, just from where I was traveling in 2013. And as time went on, I realized that actually they were quite valuable. And so I considered putting them onto my website or my blog. And then when I realized the amount of information that I had and the potential that was there, I decided to compile them into a book.
Oh, that's fantastic. Okay, so, you know, like you mentioned, the first time you came was in 2006. What was the reaction for friends and family?
I remember so it's difficult to say because at that time Pakistan had a different image around the world than it does now even.
Yeah.
Back then it was considered, I guess, quite unstable, but then at the same time it didn't have the headlines surrounding it that then came after 2006. So a lot of people were sort of asking me, is it safe? Are you sure you should be going there? But then a lot of other people were just like, oh, Pakistan, that sounds so exotic. You know? And so and they actually weren't that familiar with where it was or what it was.
Right.
So I got mixed reactions, but it was, I think, by my second or third visit here that my family probably were at peace with me coming here.
They're more comfortable.
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So, you know, your first visit, everybody has a sort of impression of a place that they're going to. You've seen photographs, you've seen news stories or whatever, you know. So you land in Pakistan, and tell us about your impressions then, and you know, the culture shocks and the culture surprises. What happened?
I think I made, I won't say a mistake, but I think that I probably really jumped in the deep end by landing in Karachi first, of all places. So, and Karachi is a wonderful city that I have learned to love in the past couple of years. But certainly when I first arrived in 2006, it was a world away from anywhere that I had been before. And I remember when I first arrived, I just thought, I had booked myself for 3 weeks in Pakistan, and the first thing that came into my mind was, I've bitten off more than I can chew.
Okay.
Because I had spent a lot of time in Iran before, I had spent a lot of time in Jordan, Turkey, I mean various countries, but nowhere quite like Pakistan.
Right.
And particularly Karachi. And of all parts of Karachi, I was staying in Sadr, which is the very grungy downtown.
Exactly, exactly.
But as time went on, I think I just made my way and I realized that, you know, you see some good things, you see some horrible things, but life tends to just go on. And it's sort of an extreme version of life anywhere else in that way.
True, true, with its own dynamics governing the way people interact with each other. Okay, what were your pleasant surprises?
The thing that really struck me about Pakistan was how alive it was. I mean, I came back with a whole catalogue of memories. playing cricket in the middle of the biggest city in Pakistan, on the street in the middle of the city, flying kites and drinking tea on rooftops at sunset and things like that. Like really sort of vivid experiences that make you appreciate, I guess, the wonderful things in life, aside from, you know, cell phones and technology and making a living and all that that we usually carry on with. But I guess the simple pleasures in life. And yeah, it just struck me how alive it was. And I think I may have used the term or the word at the time. There seems to be a lot of passion in Pakistani society.
True.
Yeah,
that's absolutely true. Okay, so. As you said, you know, you made these notes while you were traveling, and you put them all together, and then you realized that, okay, that this is important information that I have here, and you wanted to share it with other people. Now, from that transition from notes to a book, and the journey that you had, the challenges you faced, tell us about that.
That was a journey that took about 2 years, actually. From 2013, I had the notes, and I at that point already had my blog, so I thought about, and in fact I did open up another page on the blog which would be dedicated to Pakistan travel information. But then I realized that it would be, I would be able to get people to pay for this, and I guess I'm not much of a businessman, but what is of a businessman in me saw the opportunity. And I realized also that the notes that I was collecting were not general information. They were actually quite, there was a lot of specific information in there. So I spent most of 2014 looking into how I could get this published. And I spent a lot of time writing. I spent a lot of time meeting publishers and so on, but I just kept hitting brick walls and dead ends. One in particular was that it was quite difficult to get maps for the book. For various reasons. It's quite expensive to license maps. It's quite difficult for security reasons for a foreigner in any country, I would imagine, to walk in and say, oh, I'd like a map of your capital city, please, to publish. So I spent probably about 6 months actually drawing my own scale maps for the book. So that set the publishing date back about 6 months, but I'm really happy with what I've done now because I know that they're my maps and I'm confident in them.
And what about getting together data and facts and research? How did you go about that?
I spend a lot of time traveling from place to place in Pakistan. I kept notes everywhere, from a notebook to the notes on my phone and so on. I have many contacts and many friends. As anyone who's travelled to Pakistan will attest that you know, if you're a foreigner in Pakistan, you tend to attract attention, and a lot of people want to get to know you. Yes, exactly.
People are so curious. They want to know, what are you doing here?
Exactly. And and I was certainly happy to answer their questions. But then at the same time, if they said, oh well, you know, I'm from where shall I say? I'm from Okara, or I'm from Sahiwal near Harappa, and you should come and visit me sometime. And I would say, I certainly will. I'll come along and I'll bring my notebook, and that's how I did it.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
And people must have been fascinated by your fascination.
They were. They still are. I think fascinated and occasionally bewildered, I would say.
So what was the conversation going on between you and, you know, people who just randomly come up to you and ask you what you were doing, and what were the things that usually came out in conversation?
I think initially, if it was the question of why am I in Pakistan, then I would just quite simply answer that. In the beginning, I tried to justify it. You know, Pakistan has many good things in it, and you know, there are the roads aren't paved with gold outside of Pakistan, and so on. But as time went on, I just started to adopt a very simple strategy of just saying, actually, I like it. And that's enough. You know, that's why I'm here. And in terms of writing the book, I think whenever anyone would speak to me or with me about that, I would often tell them what my plan was, and I think they thought that it would just be a nice little project that I was doing, which it was, to be honest, in the beginning. It only really became serious last year, and I think that a lot of people have been taken by surprise by the response to it. A lot of people including myself, to be honest,
That's
didn't
exactly
even realize.
what was going to be my next
Yeah.
question. How surprised were you?
Well, I knew that there would be a market for a Pakistan travel guide because there have been Pakistan travel guides in the past, and I've used one of them myself. But I do feel that although maybe the market is much smaller now, it is still there. And I can in fact even pinpoint the time when the moment when I realized that there would be a market for it, and it was when I visited the Katas Raj temples near Jhelum on GT Road in Punjab, and I saw a group of foreigners walking around, and they were being taken around by a local guide.
Okay.
And I mean, that's fantastic, but I remember thinking if that was me, I would want to be exploring it on my own. And I would never have even found out about that place if I didn't have a guidebook. So that was the moment that I realized actually maybe there are people out there that want to come to Pakistan.
Those. Okay.
Yeah.
Now you've included really important information here because, of course, the key tourist regions, cultural insights, basic tips, etiquette. Because that's also important, isn't it, to be sort of merged in with the culture as well. So how long did it take you to accomplish that? Because that's not an easy thing to do.
It's not, but in a way, because I had been coming to Pakistan since 2006, and as well as that I had been to, I think, probably about 12 predominantly Muslim countries in the 2 years before 2006, before coming to Pakistan. When I sat down to write about the culture and the etiquette in Pakistan, it wasn't that foreign to me, and it certainly didn't require as much research, or challenging research anyway, as finding out about, for example, the price of a hotel on GT Road in Sahiwal, or on Multan Road in Sahiwal, or finding out, you know, how much a foreigner will be asked to take a bus up to Murray and how much they really ought to pay.
Okay, that is a very important.
So, yeah.
And also the skill of bargaining.
And the skill of bargaining and so on. Yep, absolutely.
That's something even I can't do. So.
I've gotten better at it over the years, I have to say. But I've also found that actually there are a lot more fixed price shops in Pakistan nowadays as compared to 10, 12 years ago.
That's so true. Okay, what were your most memorable moments? Somebody who sort of, you know, stuck out from the crowd, or a particular incident, or tell us about that.
So I think, I mean, I have so many that I could talk about, but I think the one that I will mention was when I first came in 2006, and a good friend of mine, Adil, who was not originally from Multan, but living with his sister and brother-in-law in Multan at the time. He's currently outside of Pakistan. And while I was staying in Multan, I felt quite sick. And Adil at the time was studying in university, if I recall correctly. I was sick enough to be hospitalized, and I was in hospital for probably about 3 or 4 days. And Adil and his brother-in-law Sajid, they, as far as I can remember, actually slept on the floor of the hospital because they didn't want to leave me alone. And I remember thinking at the time, I don't even know that I would do that. And it really made me realize that whether it's Pakistan or whether it's that I had just had that experience in Pakistan, I don't want to generalize about that. Everyone in Pakistan is completely, you know, so generous and open-hearted. I'm sure a lot of them are. But it really struck me as that when my friend loves, he really, really loves deeply. You know, I couldn't believe it that he would be that generous and put himself out that much for me. So it really touched me, actually.
Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, we'll be getting back to the programme right now. We're going for a break, so stay with us and don't change the channel. Okay, welcome back to the programme. We're having a fantastic discussion here. We're talking to Tim Blight, who's the author of Pakistan Traveller. Okay, now with this book, when it first came into print and everything, this was your first book?
Yes, it was, yes.
Okay, tell us about the feelings you have when you have your first book in hand. And
it's, I mean, it was pretty incredible, actually. I was in Pakistan at the time, but when it got published, but the first paper copy was delivered to my family home in Sydney. So I flew back from Pakistan to Sydney to visit my parents, and they just showed me this book, and I was like, oh, it's real. And I mean, it is incredible. And it also, I think, it comes with a great responsibility as well. And that's something that I perhaps wasn't as, I wouldn't say I wasn't as ready for, but I didn't anticipate.
Right.
Because I know that in my first edition that I was quite flippant about some of the things that I did, whether it be the layout or whether it be some of the things that I wrote and so on, and what I recommended. So it was, as I mentioned earlier, it was last year that my Pakistan traveller writing actually got quite serious, because in response to the first book, which sold moderately, but when I realised that there was a market for it, I also realised that I had to provide a quality product that would be, I guess, responsible enough to guide travellers around Pakistan. Because I also do feel that, in a way, if they're reading my book, I'm guiding them.
Right,
So,
exactly.
yeah.
Because you're speaking to them.
Yes, exactly.
You're telling them exactly, what to do. And as you said, it's a responsibility as well, because it's what you're saying. So, what you're saying has to mean something. Okay, so what has the feedback been like? What are the more memorable comments that you've had from people, and you've thought, okay, I didn't think of that when I was writing this,
Sure. Well, I had one comment on, I think it might have been on the website, on Amazon, and I think someone commented, basically it was along the lines of, it is undoubtedly the best travel guidebook to Pakistan on the market.
Fantastic.
And that was just an amazing feeling.
And that made it all worthwhile.
Yeah, absolutely.
At that time,
absolutely.
didn't it?
And even other things. I know another thing which caught me by surprise recently was that I was speaking with one of my readers, or I was chatting with one of my readers on Facebook, and I said, I hope that the book's been useful for you. And she said, well, the book has been quite useful, but she said, the other thing is that we've been up to the northern areas, and all the foreigners we met up there have your book.
Imagine.
And that was just, I almost dropped my phone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's such a wonderful feeling.
It's such an amazing feeling. And I feel like I need to go up there now and meet them all. So
you're famous.
Yeah.
Which knows you, that's
Yeah.
great. Okay, tell us, why is it important to travel?
I think that travel is something which can open our minds, and it can also open the minds of the people in the country that we're visiting as well.
Sure.
Especially between Pakistan and many Western countries. I come from Australia. I feel that there are so many misconceptions on both sides.
Absolutely.
As I mentioned earlier, I think I know quite a few people in Pakistan or I've met quite a few people in Pakistan who seem to think that outside of Pakistan the roads are just paved with gold. And I mean, of course, there are benefits to living outside of Pakistan, but it's not to say that there's nothing worthwhile here either. And equally, when I'm in Australia, if I get comments like, oh, do they have cars in Pakistan? Do they have this kind of thing? And I'm like, yeah, actually they do. Most people that I know have a car or at least a bike. So, I mean, breaking down borders, breaking down stereotypes like that.
Yeah.
And I think moreover for a place like Pakistan, which is so misunderstood, it's also unfortunately affecting the economy.
Yeah,
And the
exactly.
economy. So I
Yeah.
think that what I'm doing is not just, I guess, providing work, or I won't say providing work, not just providing
Opening avenues.
Yeah, opening avenues,
Yeah.
but for tourism, but also for other businesses as well.
Other things as well,
I hope
making
so.
it an investor-friendly country
Yeah,
that way, aren't
exactly.
we?
I
Because
certainly
it's-
hope so.
Yeah, that's great, that's fantastic. अब थोड़ी सी उर्दू में बात कर लेते हैं क्या ख्याल है
हमेशा मैं कहता हूँ मेरी उर्दू बहुत अच्छी नहीं है, लेकिन मैं समझ आती है और मुझे समझ आती है।
नहीं अच्छी उर्दू है,
शुक्रिया।
the main thing is communication, तो आप communication तो कर रहे हैं।
बहुत शुक्रिया। तो मैं actually ये मेरा मकसद है, क्योंकि मैं पाकिस्तान रहना चाहता हूँ, मैं बहुत खुश पाकिस्तान में हूँ। तो basically मैं जानता हूँ मैं उर्दू उस्ताद नहीं होऊंगा, लेकिन at least मेरा मकसद communication है।
और वो आप कर रहे हैं।
हाँ, बहुत शुक्रिया।
Fantastic, wonderful. It's lovely to listen to your Urdu.
Thank you.
It's really interesting. Okay, because this is a program where we talk about books and we talk about arts and we talk about literature and other things as well. You've been travelling around the world. Do you think people are reading enough?
I think that people are reading a lot. I don't know if they're reading enough of the right stuff.
That's a very important point.
Yeah, I feel that people certainly read a lot, and I think that a lot of people will say nobody reads nowadays, and I think people do read, but they read things like, you know, the 10 best restaurants in Sydney, or the 10 best holiday destinations, or something like that. I mean, that's great, but I don't think that that's it. I think that we also need to have
So much
literature,
more.
and there is so much more.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's good that I guess people haven't given up reading entirely.
True.
And certainly I feel a bit of pressure in terms of that as well, in terms of if someone asks me to write about Pakistan, quite often it will be, we don't want to hear all of your descriptions about the mountains, we just want to hear your top 3 places. And it's almost like they're looking for little sound bites. I wonder if it's an effect of technology that people are
It
looking
is
for a shorter...
because the attention span has reduced, and the attention deficit is definitely there with everything happening so quickly.
Yeah.
And you've got things popping up, just like pop-up windows. That's exactly how your brain is working.
Yeah.
You've got one window open, and then you close that, and you go to another one. So that's, you know, sort of what's going on. And people, if you think about it, people will look at something, and in the first few seconds they'll decide whether they want to continue doing that or not.
It is quite literally judging a book by its cover.
It's a challenge, isn't it?
It is. It is a challenge, and it's not so much for my book, but in terms of my writing on my blog, I feel a lot of pressure to make it punchy and catchy and so on. There's a lot of marketing in writing as well, especially now. I mean, I assume it's gotten more because I definitely feel it nowadays.
True, absolutely. Okay. Before I came, for the program today, I put some questions to my friends, and I told them about you, and they had some questions, so I'm going to ask them on behalf of them.
Okay.
Somebody asked, what made you come to Pakistan? It was an accident or what? Just a...
I love it when people say, how did you end up here? It was quite literally just the next country that I wanted to visit.
Right.
I had been in Iran for an extended period of time, a couple of months traveling around, and I knew that the Iranian culture or the Persian culture traditionally flowed more to the east through Afghanistan, Pakistan and northern India. And so I thought that this would make a nice extension on my trip to the end of Iran. And I picked up a guidebook, as I did back then, and I saw pictures of the mountains, and I read about the culture and so on, and I thought that sounds like an interesting holiday destination. And certainly, before going to Iran, everyone had told me that I would not come back alive, and I did twice. So I thought, well, what are the chances that I would be right about Pakistan as well?
Right.
So, yeah.
Great. Fantastic. Okay. The unique thing that you found in Pakistan or Pakistani culture or people?
That's a tricky question, actually. One thing that I have to say is, and not to put the question back over to you, but I feel that the more you travel and the more countries you visit, the more you realize the similarities rather than the differences between.
That's very interesting.
Yeah, between people. There are certainly. I was having a conversation with someone just last night, actually, and they were talking about Australian families.
Okay.
And I said something, and they said, but that's just like Pakistan. And I said, well, I think it's just families. I don't think it's,
So true.
But if I could think about, something unique in the Pakistani character, I think it's definitely the excitement that they feel when they see a foreigner or someone who has come to their country. And there are numerous reasons for that, but I can't help but suspect that one of them is that you don't see many foreigners in Pakistan nowadays. And I think there are certainly reasons why, historical reasons why Pakistanis get excited about foreigners coming here, but I think in the current context, there's also the fact that thank you for coming. Why would you come here? There are so many people who badmouth Pakistan on an international forum. So
exactly what you said, the excitement. The excitement that, okay, with negativity going out on media and things like that, and the sort of incorrect impression being spread around the world. When you see someone from another country, that is your opportunity to then tell them, just as you said, that hey, it's not what you're just being exposed to. There's so much more going on here.
Exactly, and to connect with them and to break down those boundaries as well. The question that I always get asked, and whenever I've ever seen other foreigners in Pakistan and been with them with other Pakistanis at the same time, the question always gets asked, how was your experience in Pakistan? And I don't think I've experienced that in many other countries, certainly in Australia. I mean, people will ask, oh, what do you think about Australia? But it's not sort of how was your experience? And then the follow-up question, so the media is not right.
Right.
So, yeah.
And then that's not such an easy question to answer anyway, is it? Because everything is not black and white.
No.
There's just so many dimensions to different things.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And there are, I mean, there is good and bad in Pakistan. I certainly, on my first journey, I had a couple of bad experiences. I had some amazing experiences.
Of course.
And then equally, when it comes to the media, I mean, a common refrain that I hear from a lot of Pakistanis is, everyone outside Pakistan hates Pakistan and the media is so against us and all this. And for me, I don't actually subscribe to much media that is anti-Pakistan.
Okay.
So when they say that to me, I sort of think, well, I've actually chosen to ignore that.
Okay,
And,
so you're becoming a Pakistani by heart as well.
Well, maybe a Pakistani by heart. I hope it's not ignorance, but I just, I think we do choose where we hear stories from.
That's true.
So I think it's important
Credible
to choose.
news sources are something that a person is sort of aware about.
Yeah.
That's true. Okay, another friend asked, do you hold talks or workshops? Because people would want to learn from you. You're an inspirational figure.
Thank you very much. That's very kind of you and them to say. But currently I don't. I recently gave a talk with a group called the Asian Study Group here in Islamabad.
Right, yeah.
But I haven't so far given or held any workshops or anything. But it's certainly something that I've thought about.
You should.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure there'd be good, because there will be so many people who will be watching this program and they'll want to know more.
Yeah,
they'll want to talk to you. They'd want to know about your experiences.
I'd certainly be interested in doing that, and it's something I've thought about it before actually, and that might be, I think you may have planted a seed.
Right. That's good then. That's good. Okay, your focus when you were sort of you're here. What thing drew you the most? Was it the culture? Was it the people? Was it the terrain? What was it?
To be honest, the thing that stood out to me first was in a guidebook, which is now out of print, and it was the picture of the Pasu cones, the cathedral range in north of Hunza in Pakistan. I remember seeing a picture of that and thinking that looked like something out of a fairy tale. I mean, it couldn't be real.
Right.
And there was also that thing of it being so far north, almost up on the border with China, that it was almost like a challenge or a goal to reach that. So I knew that I had to go there. And then when I arrived here, I just fell in love with it. I met some amazing people. I had some amazing food. I saw some amazing things. I mean, the architecture, the lifestyle of a lot of the people who I know. I mean, again, I don't want to say that it applies to everybody,
Of course, yeah.
a lot of the people who I know, wouldn't think twice of, if you call them up at 2 o'clock in the morning and say, do you want to go out and get lassi? And then, I mean, if we were to do that in Australia, most people I know would sort of be like, are you crazy? It's 2 in the morning. Whereas here, it would be like, okay, chilla. So, yeah, and I love that.
Yeah. But I suppose the sort of sense of freedom in a way, when you're not you're not sort of adhering to some sort of a strict routine, and you know that things can be moved, and there's a certain sense of liberation in that.
Absolutely, and I love it. I mean, sometimes it drives me mad as well, but I do love it though.
True,
I mean, you take the good with the bad.
Exactly, and then you get used to the organised chaos.
You do.
There is a method to the madness,
exactly.
that you see around you, so you can.
You know that if you've got an appointment at 6 o'clock, that you have a couple of things that you might do in case they turn up at 7. So,
how many problems have you had when it came to time?
I think what I go through every time I come back here is I have to plan my days differently. When I'm in Australia, it's a matter of this will happen now, this will happen now, this
Right.
will happen now. And it's not even that I want to be that way, but that's just how things happen.
Right.
Whereas in Pakistan, I normally spend about a week getting frustrated that that doesn't happen.
Right.
And then I slip back into my routine of, well, I have this to do at 6 o'clock, but I also have all these other things to do.
So if so-and-so doesn't turn
Yeah.
up, I can get this done in that time. And that.
Exactly, and that's how you manage it, especially
It's
if
true.
you are busy, if you're not completely free, and you need to get stuff done. So yeah.
So tell us about, the different types of transport in the country and your experiences with those as well.
I have travelled by, I think, most forms of transport in Pakistan, from a boat from Karachi or near Karachi to China Island, to buses, rickshaws, chingchi rickshaws,
Donkey carts, maybe?
donkey carts. I've
Yeah.
sat on the back of tungas before.
Okay.
What else? I have one time I was up in the northern areas in 2010 when the big floods were happening.
Okay, right.
And I got into the town of Sost, which is the first town over the border from China. Got into the town of Sost at about 8 o'clock one night. Checked into a hotel. There was a busload of us. And then we woke up the next morning to find out that the road out of Sost into the rest of Pakistan had been washed out. A bridge had been washed out. But then we couldn't go back the other way because we had already used our Chinese visas. So we were sort of trapped on this island. And the only way out was about 5 days later when someone rigged up a cable across the floodwaters with a metal cage, I would describe it as. And we sat in the metal cage and they pulleyed us across the floodwaters and so on. I think I uploaded that picture to Facebook about 6 months later and my mother was horrified.
She must have been. She must have been.
She was.
Yeah.
But I mean,
But then that was the need of the hour.
well, it was,
at that time.
I said everyone else was doing it and it was either
Yeah.
that or settle down
Or
in
being
Sost.
stranded.
So,
Right, okay.
Yeah.
So another book that I'm going to talk about now is Recipes for Ramzan. And I opened the pages and looked through this, and I was immediately, I was just starving and I was famished, and I thought, that's lovely. And these are pictures of your cooking.
Yes,
Yeah?
most of them I think are my cooking. There were one
Right.
or two dishes which, or a couple of dishes which may have been prepared by a friend of mine who helped
Okay.
me with the photography.
So this is technical stuff.
Yes, the bulk of it is, yeah.
So how did
Yeah.
this happen?
This was actually after putting out the first Pakistan Traveller, I was starting to work on the second edition, which is the one which is here today. And I realised that it wouldn't be out for at least another 2 years. So the other thing is that I love to eat, as I think we all do.
Yeah.
And whenever I've travelled, I've been to 48 countries. And as I've been travelling, I've always asked people, okay, what's that recipe? How can I make that? Where can I get it from? Because I
Right.
wanted to have it back in Australia.
Okay.
So I realised actually that I could put a lot of these recipes in a book together. I went back to a lot of those people and asked their permission to use the recipes, and they've been credited in there.
Right.
And it's not just recipes for Ramadan, but it's also a book of travel recipes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I must give you my recipe for aloo ki kheer.
Please do. Please do.
So
I
when
would
you
love
have
that.
your next, and I'll also send you a picture.
Yes,
of it.
yes,
So-
please do, please do.
So I booked a place.
I'd love that. I'll need to taste it first, though.
Okay,
Yep.
right. I'll make sure you taste it first.
Thank you.
You sort of like recommend it. Yeah, okay.
Yep, sure,
it's
sure,
it's
yep.
good enough to go in my book now.
Well, that was the thing I thought. I mean, some of the recipes I've tasted, and I've just sort of thought, oh, I don't know that I really want to make that back in Australia, and then they didn't end up in the book. So,
Right.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's fantastic. And again, that's for recipes for Ramzan. So that's very, very sort of appropriate right now at the time of the month. So the time of the year that's coming. What is your favourite here?
That would be difficult to say, but I
Okay,
think maybe baklava
some of your
or
some of your
sweets.
favourites. The sweets. Okay, so you have a sweet tooth.
I do have a sweet tooth, and it would
Okay.
either be the baklava in the Middle Eastern section, or the
Right.
kheer in the subcontinent section,
Okay.
or the white chocolate cheesecake in the Western section.
Okay,
So,
right.
yes.
So when you went back, so of course, you were sort of you must have been so, like people here were fascinated with you here, right? And then you going back to Australia with all these experiences and all these things, different cultures and people that you'd met, you'd probably an object of fascination there as well. So what were people asking you?
I do get that a little bit. I find it's quite different in Australia to over here, obviously, that a lot of people ask me, what is your life like in Pakistan? How do you live over there? Which is, I mean, partly sometimes they're asking from, incredulity, they're incredulous about how could you do
How
that?
could you, yeah.
But then other people are just quite fascinated. They're quite like, well, what is the life like over there?
Yeah, in a positive sense.
Yeah, and other people simply don't know much about Pakistan, so they want to hear, what is Pakistan like? What is there to see there? Could I go there? And of course, I always get a bit excited when I hear that because I'm like, well, I have a book about that. So
And here you are.
exactly. But I do also find that in Pakistan, my work here, in terms of the travel guide at least, is very different from the work in Australia, because the work in Pakistan is to get information, to research, to encourage people, to recommend it to anyone they might know who's coming and so on, coming to Pakistan and so on. But I find in Australia, and in fact the wider world, it's not simply selling a book about Pakistan, but it's actually selling Pakistan as a destination.
Sure.
Because I could write a travel guide about many countries and they would fly off the shelves, I would hope. But with Pakistan, it's not just a matter of getting my book out there, but it's even once the book's out there, convincing people that actually you would want to do it.
Yeah.
So
True.
I find that's, in a way, it almost goes into tourism promotion rather than just book promotion.
Absolutely, that's true. Okay, coming back to this book as well, did you have friends over? Did you cook for them? And what were the sort of the meals that everybody really liked, and the universal hits or the universal misses? What were they?
I tried to include, because there was a lot of experimentation with this, and the thing is, I had already made a lot of these recipes before because I had picked them up while I was traveling.
Okay.
So I think all of them in there had turned out as hits at some point, because that was why they were in the book, and the misses just didn't see the light of day.
Okay.
Which
was the sort of like, this is, everyone's going to fall for this one. Which was the one of the top?
One again. I think it was some of the desserts that I think one time I made chocolate brownies, and then after that I had a couple of friends over, and from memory I was watching my weight at the time, so I thought, okay, I'm not going to eat them myself. I'm going to invite some friends over and share them together.
Okay.
And my group of friends were just silent for about 20 minutes, or devouring these chocolate brownies. And
you could have a good business here with.
Maybe I should. I should open. Yeah,
you should
exactly.
try that out
Pakistan
as well. Why not?
Eating. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, but I did. I did always try to share it among friends, because I think that's the best way. You are your own worst critic, and either you taste something and you think, oh, well, I love it, but maybe my friends wouldn't, or you taste it and you think, oh, that's nothing like what I expected it to be, and then your friends are like, actually, it's not that bad. I think you're just being hard on yourself. So you need that. Yeah.
Any particular, things that sort of annoy you? Any particular questions or situations?
I do get annoyed, and I sort of need to be careful what I say here, but I get annoyed or frustrated, I should say, when I'm given the status of a celebrity in Pakistan simply because I'm a foreigner.
Okay.
And it's certainly, I mean, and I know that sounds hypocritical, because just before I said that it's very endearing that a lot of Pakistanis get excited to see a foreigner, but I think excited to see a foreigner in your country in a situation like Pakistan, where there aren't that many foreigners coming here. There certainly used to be, but it stopped. I think that's one thing, but I've certainly been in situations where people will say, oh, okay, enough about your book, just say something in Urdu.
Oh, that is, yeah.
And it's sort of like, oh, okay. And then they're like, oh, so, tell us about Australia. And
Right.
it's sort of like, well, I'm not really, I mean, I'm an ambassador for Australia in terms of being an Australian outside of Australia, but beyond that, I would rather be known for what I write rather than who I am. I don't see my skin colour as an achievement of mine. I see that as just how I am. And, there's a long conversation to be had about race and politics and everything there. So I certainly understand that, but it doesn't make me comfortable. Yeah.
Are you writing any more books? What's happening? Anything on the on the horizon there?
I am working on the 3rd edition of Pakistan Traveller because it will need updating.
Updating, definitely. That's what I was going to ask you.
Yeah, absolutely.
What will you be updating?
There will be a lot of things that have changed in Pakistan. So Lahore's Orange Line metro train is due to open sometime this year, but my next edition is due to be out next year sometime. Prices go up, places open, places close down. So a lot of that. I would also like to put a bit more detail on certain sections of it. I won't reveal which sections I feel I didn't put enough detail on there.
Right.
So far I've had mostly positive feedback, but I know the book better than anyone else, of course, and so I know where I think, you know, I've been there since having published the book, and then I've looked at what I've written and I've thought, actually, I could do that better.
Right.
So, yeah.
It seems to me like you're a bit of a perfectionist.
I think you need to be a writer. Because I think, or at least to be a successful writer, because I certainly think that people can see quality, and I think people know quality when they see it. Yeah, so I think it's very important, and especially the cost of books around the world nowadays is higher, I think, than it's ever been because of various reasons, and I certainly know that if someone paid the money, if I paid the money for a book, I would expect to get something for it. So I don't want to be in a situation where someone comes back to me and says, well, I bought your book and I didn't think it was worth that money and it didn't help me. I want it to be useful. Yeah.
Right. Okay. You told us in the beginning that you've also been teaching English.
Yes.
So tell us about that experience.
So in Australia, I am an English teacher to adults, mostly foreigners who, well, I'd say, you know, completely foreigners who come to Australia who want to improve their English. Okay. And I also do a bit of casual work on that while I'm in Pakistan as well. So I teach English to specifically adults and mostly people who want to go abroad, which is a bit of a contradiction actually, because I'm on my way into Pakistan and I'm helping people leave Pakistan by... You could say I'm involved in the exchange of ideas. I get foreigners to come here as travellers and Pakistanis to leave as students.
Okay, so, what do you sort of... What do you find that people struggle the most in, and what do you encourage them to do? And I would think that it would be the most thing that you'd say is that practice more and just, you know, get out of your inhibitions, because we find that many people, they are okay with expressing themselves, but they're more self-conscious.
That's absolutely right. And if ever I have had a class where, I mean, you know, we know that English has a certain status in many countries around the world, but particularly in Asia, of being like a status marker. And I've been in classes before where students have tried to speak English, and you know, another student might have snickered because they made a mistake or something. Very true. And I think it's so important to shut that down straight away, because a lot of these students, they already know a lot of English, but it's simply their confidence that is the issue. The
confidence, exactly. So what are your quick tips for them, the confidence? I
say just speak. Look, as I said to a student a couple of months ago, she said, "Oh, but you know, if I speak in class, then I don't think my speaking is that bad, but other students will laugh." And I said, "But if you speak and your speaking is so good and you build your confidence, then you will pass the test that you need to pass, and you'll be able to go overseas, and then who will be laughing?" So I just say, just do it. You know, I mean, really, if they're laughing at you for something as silly as that, I wouldn't give them much time.
Then you're not the problem; they're the problem.
I really wouldn't give them much time.
That's true. Yeah. Okay, we're approaching the end of the programme. It's been absolutely fantastic speaking to you, Tim. A quick message for our viewers.
Well, one thing that I would say is just if you are outside of Pakistan, please do come to Pakistan, because it is just the most amazing country. And admittedly, it's not for everyone. It's got its faults like any country, but at least come here and experience it and look for the good. And if you're watching this in Pakistan, then know that there is certainly a lot of good in Pakistan as well. And it's certainly... people from outside Pakistan do want to see Pakistan. Maybe not enough of them right now, but I'm working on that. So,
that's fantastic. That's a wonderful message. So Tim Blight, author of Pakistan Traveller, thank you so much for being on the programme. It's been a pleasure speaking to you.
Thank you very much for having me here.
Okay. Right, and with that we come to the end of today's program. Really fascinating one. We were talking to Tim Blight, who's telling us about his travels in Pakistan and the book that he wrote in consequence of that. So, you know, it's a wonderful experience to know that people from abroad are also getting a positive image and, you know, really understanding what the country is all about. So until next week, stay happy. Bye-bye.